the open mic, how long, and that type of thing. We just invite anybody to come up, and Dave will go over that. Dave Bullock is one of the organizers of the gathering.
Can everybody hear well? Does we need to put the mic a little closer?
How about that? Is that better?
Wife isn't here, so I have to tell them.
Forgot where I was. Dave Bullock is one of the organizers of the gathering, and he comes from a very, very rich mining family. Great grandpa and dad and grandpa.
I'm a third generation.
Okay, third generation. So you'd be pretty hard pressed to pull one over on Dave. And I think really he's maybe not the, but he's pretty dang close to the expert on Lost Rhoades mine. So Dave was going to manhandle the open mic, and we invite you to come up, and Dave will give you the rest. So Dave Bullock.
I'm going to have two microphones.
Must mean I'm important.
But I want to welcome you all here. This is only my 4th year at the Moonlight Gathering. I really missed out because this is the 26th annual Moonlight Gathering. Now, I wanted to go to the gathering before 4 years ago, but I didn't want to interrupt these guys sitting around a campfire, and you know, they were probably pretty comfortable with themselves, and then here comes a stranger in, and so I didn't do that. But then I heard that they were going to have it up at the Moon Lake, and that's awful close to home. So I decided I was going to come, and I'm glad I did, because in those days we were right over there in Altamont. And between speakers, they'd ask people to come up. They opened the mic up, and they asked people to come up and share their stories. And nobody came up. And I thought, well, shoot, this is my grand moment. And so I got up and told a groovy story. And I think it was well received because I've been coming back ever since. And I can tell you that the next 3 days, today and the next 2 days, are probably going to be some of the funnest, most enjoyable experiences you're going to have, as long as you're willing to talk to people and listen to their stories. And that's why we've got the open mic. The open mic, this is what I look forward to. We've got professionals that are going to be speaking to you throughout this event, but I want to hear from the folks that have the stories. Not, well, George told my cousin Fred that this happened, and it just kind of gets lost. But when you get up and tell a story to an audience, and you put your efforts into it, and I was so scared the first time I got up to tell a story. I had stage fright so bad, I wanted to turn around and run away. And so I either had to overcome it and tell my story or run away. And so I stayed, and it worked out, and I still get stage fright. I mean, it's just natural. And we're all forgiving, so if you all have stories to share, we want to hear them. Now, I've been a miner for over 70 years. I may not look that old, but I've also been an engineer for over 25 years. And I was a storyteller for 55 years. And I can keep going on and going on, and it turns out that I'm actually 217 years old. But the stories that I tell are pretty much from a mining background. Now, my dad and my grandfather, they ran so many different mines, and my grandfather organized over 30 different mining corporations, mining and oil. Now, what I've got here and I'm going to share it with you, is my grandfather's doodle bug. Now, he called it a doodle bug because I guess he just didn't have a better name for it. But, whoops. What it is, it's a dowsing rod. And it's a dabber. And what you do is put on a bottle of whatever you're looking for, and I'm caught here in the hinges. But you screw the bottle onto the end of this rod. Oh, it's like, I've got one here. It's called Charity. Now, my grandfather had a personality. He's got a bottle full of the spirit of the Lord because he always wanted to be close to God. He has this one, Charity, because he always wanted to find the goodness in somebody's soul. And he's got one in there called Male, M-A-L-E. I didn't realize it until just about a half hour ago why that's in his kit. I'm really surprised because I've always, since I inherited this dowsing rod, I've always thought that my grandpa was kind of a joker, and if any women out there are looking for a good man, well, I've got the antidote. I screw it onto the end of my bottle here, my wand, and I'll find a good male for you. And it works. The problem is it wasn't that reason at all. He had male in there. I think I can almost pull it out here. Yep, there it is. Now, it has, now shield your ears, fibrous testicle tissue from a male. Now, women don't have testicles, so that's kind of obvious. But he found out that there was a young boy that had fallen through the ice at Provo Boat Harbor. And he thought that he might be able to locate that young man using his doodle bug. So he took his doodle bug down to Utah Lake and he started, and he even got prepared. He went to the morgue, I believe, and he got some testicular tissue, and he found that boy under the ice. He located him using this doodle bug, and they computed the flow where this boy was moving under the ice, and they went ahead and figured out which direction he was going, and they picked and shoveled, and they dug down, and they were able to recover the boy's body. Now, I've been tempted to search for lost children and people that have been murdered and their bodies have disappeared. But then I got to thinking that, hey, what if I really could find that body? I'd probably be the first person on the most wanted list. They'd think I was the prime suspect. So I just don't do that yet. But this is really, really fun for me as an exercise tool, so that I can put gold on here and I can just play with, just pretend there's gold on here. This thing will start wiggling around. Actually, it's male on there now, and it's, I guess the biggest man in the house is Mark. But this is really a nice way of finding what you're looking for. Now, there's other ways. These are dowsing rods. I mean, you can make them out of coat hangers and they'll work. And a lot of people don't believe in them. I've had people tell me they're of Satan and that they are evil. And at the time that they were referred to as evil, they didn't know what radio waves were. They didn't know what any of these atomic waves, you know, all of these invisible rays that are surrounding us in the earth, they didn't know, and so they blamed it on the devil. And they tried to keep people from using these because that way they'd have more control over the people. Because after all, if I were to use these and go out and find a pile of gold, I'd probably move to Florida. And then they wouldn't have me to control. So that's just a little way to say, hey, dowsing really does work. It's real. Now the other day, this is only about 2 weeks ago, I had an arborist come up and he did a lot of tree cutting up on my property. And he lost his phone. Now we got acres of land and lots of just brush everywhere, and where is that phone? I just thought, well, you're out of luck. And then I thought, wait a minute, I teach dowsing, and I wonder if I would use my dowsing rods and find his phone. And so I went out to the truck where I keep these, and I picked them up. Now I touched them to my phone, kind of like so they'd know what they're looking for. And I held these things up, and immediately the rods pointed into the forest, and I followed the direction it was pointing, and within 1 minute I had found this young man's phone. He was blown away, and so was I. Because not 2 weeks before that, I'd gone with my buddies, and I said, go outside and pick a leaf off of a bush and bring it in, give it to me, and I'll find that tree that leaf came from. Well, I've seen it done, and I've done it myself, so I felt pretty confident. And so they went out and brought me in a couple of leaves, and I rubbed them on my hands, and I held the rods up, and it led me outside and pointed me to a bush. I didn't find it. It was about 5 feet away. So they don't always work if you're not in tune. But I'll tell you, if you believe, if you got any faith, that's the way you get these rods to work. I can't really explain the physics of it, but Einstein did. He's got a theory, and he said that lights, instead of repelling each other, they attract. And so if you've got a golden nugget, like I've got this nugget on my finger from the Lost Rhoades pine mine, if I got this golden nugget, I ought to be able to use that nugget to find the pine mine. Now, that's a long stretch, but I'll tell you, my grandfather, he found the Lost Rhoades pine mine. You know, the one that's got the map and it's got a pine tree and it says Oro 1856? He found that mine. It was so small of a shaft, and he had to clear the brush away, and he tied a rope to a tree, and then he tied it around his waist, and he climbed down in that hole, and before he knew it, he found where they had been chiseling gold off of a gold vein. And at the very end of that gold vein, there was still gold in the rock. So he took his pick out, his little prospector pick, and he knocked off a big clump of that gold and quartz. He stuffed it down his shirt, and he climbed back out of the hole. He went and he made a claim, not one claim, but approximately 22 claims on the property up there in the Uinta Mountains. Well, he had the claims, rightfully his. He got a group of men to go up there and start digging. Well, somebody beat him to it. They thought, well, if I borrow Uncle Wilbur's Caterpillar bulldozer, we can go up there this afternoon and uncover that gold and get it before the bullocks come back up here. And that's exactly what they tried to do. They got a bulldozer, they went up there and they started slicing away at the mountain. And every slice they were pushing dirt down into the shaft. And they filled the shaft up, and they never found what they were looking for, and they destroyed the Lost Rhoades pine mine. And when my dad and my grandfather saw what somebody had done to their claim, They thought it was the Indians, and they didn't want any problem with the Indians, so they walked away from the mine. They could have gone in and used rods to find out where the gold is and spent money and gone in and mined and recovered the gold. But my grandfather and my father walked away from that mine because they thought it was Indians instead of a couple of claim jumpers. Imagine what the history of this valley would be if somebody were to recover what by today's standards would be billions of dollars in gold. Imagine the industry. We've already got it, but it's, let's see, that happened in 1958, and here we are in 2025. I think a lot of good things could have come from that gold, especially if I was sitting in the bucket seat of one of them. Now, dowsing rods are really relatively easy to use. You go and find a coat hanger, a metal coat hanger, you bend it so it's got a 90 degree, and you can tape on what you're looking for. So if you're looking for a gold nugget, you tape a gold nugget on. But like me, you're too poor to have a gold nugget, so you have to think about it in your mind. And I'll be darned if just mental think doesn't hook up with a lot of things that we're looking for. So we lost out on the Lost Rhoades mine. And I wonder how things would be if those two guys hadn't have been so dishonest and tried to go and take something away that didn't belong to them. And we knew who they were after we found out. It was years later. We found out who they were, and my dad didn't want to have any revenge at all. He had one experience where a stockbroker sold some of his corporate stock that he had, made off with over $200,000. And my dad, why aren't you going after him, Dad? And he says, well, I never had the money in the first place. And that's kind of the way my dad looked at things. He didn't want to cause trouble for other people, even if they caused trouble for him. Well, what I'd like to do is not give you guys any trouble. I'd really appreciate it if there's somebody that's got a story. Now, these stories be 5-7 minutes long. I don't want you to come up here and testify that you believe in the devil like happened a couple of years ago. I want to have good stories about phenomena that's kind of freaky and hard to explain, like UFOs, you know, or aliens, Bigfoot. I've got Bigfoot stories, I've got UFO stories, I've got them all, but I want to hear them from you. So I'm hoping that you're going to come down here and share your stories with us. And at that, I'm going to open up the mic. Does anybody want to come down? There we go. State your name.
Yes.
And where you from?
Okay. Now, there's a certain person that asked me where I was from, and I wouldn't tell him much, so he calls me Double A. Okay? Is that better? Okay. My real name is Rhoades Smith. I'm low profile. I'm not a high profile guy. So I went to the basics. So what I want you to do is to clear your mind. Don't be thinking about a treasure spot. I want you to think, how would I do a treasure spot? Now, before we start, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what I thought. Lawrence Rhoades is where we're going to start. Okay, Quantrell, Charles Higby, very important person. They go down with the first sergeant and talk to Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis has a conversation with those three people. The bookkeeper was told to leave. He does not know what occurred. The two slaves that were his help were spies for the North, and they were also dismissed. So there's only two people that really knows what goes on. Okay? So now, the Lawrence raid takes place, And the bookkeeper had said, all I know is that it was very big, 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 big. And that's what his book says. So he doesn't even know what goes on. But they go to the Lawrence raid. Charles Higby is the bagman. And I believe he's probably related because I get the impression that he slept there overnight. And he's the main bagman. So all he does is come out, and the lady was Davis, and she goes to place to place to place because she's the north part on the south side, because she will tell them exactly where all the money is. And they go away with close to 300,000. Okay? Where's the money go? Very simple. Higby got the money because Quantrill ended up as a captain. The lieutenant Higby became, or pardon me, he was a captain, and the lieutenant was Higby. Okay. Now that doesn't sound like very much, but the money went somewhere and I can't find it. I don't know where it went. So good luck if you can find it. But I think it went to Missouri, but I can't prove it. So now, how does this all fit together? Okay, stage number 2 with Mr. Higby. All of these people were looking for Mr. Higby. They wished to speak to him about where their money was and where their cut was. And they looked and looked and looked, and I finally found a little thing that says, one of them told me he went to Canada. So I started looking in Canada. So here's what happens. Bingo, he's there, and he's in the Chicago raid, and he's listed as a lieutenant and draws his $17 and a pistol. So he's working undercover in the Canadian side, just to give you a quick background. So there is a raid in Maryland. He is the bagman, okay? He is the only one that gets shot. And the guys all head to Canada, and there's a big court battle over this, believe it or not, and Canada ended up playing of what happened. But what happened to Higby is he caught one in the hip. So he breaks off. I suspect that his sister lives up there, and he went to his sister's. Now we're going to bring in Davis here, because what has happened is Lincoln has been killed. And I find one little paragraph that tells me that Dr. White went to Montreal to see our little friend Higby. So that's telling me, here we are again with $300,000, and where did it go? Well, this one I think I have figured out, because what happened is, Higby has the money, the war's over, he's sick, he went get checked on, and where does he go? He goes home for a while. He takes that money, he comes to Texas, moves a couple places, and what does he do? He ends up being the head controller of the bank in Texas. Okay? So now, how do you connect the dots? That would be very easy for Jesse James or anybody else to deposit money in that bank and say, I'm John Doe, but this is where most of that money went. And now that city is worth trillions of dollars because he bought up all the land way back when he was there. And his body has been dug up and removed back to Kentucky where his family is. Okay? So that's just one story of how the money disappears and where it went and things like that. Now, I know I can't talk forever and people are starting to fall asleep, so I'm going to make it faster. Okay? What you want to think about is, some of you have probably been on the site and you've seen an image, regardless whether it's a stick or an alligator or owl or whatever. Think about, how did they make that? Okay, I'm going to explain to you. It's not magic. What they've done is, and I brought it here, that at the end, They use, this is Masonic stuff, they use an overlay of Jerusalem. And that's where the temple is. So depending on your color that you see, they're giving you an image. Now that image, it will not be there, it might be a quarter of a mile away, but it's telling you you're in the right area of what you're doing. And these are all in Sonic books. And there's lots of them on the internet. The problem is figuring out which is the red ones and which is the blue ones and all that kind of stuff. So on this site that I'm working, Jesse James site, but this is Spanish, I know it is. Now, this guy is supposed to be a mixing bowl of some sort, okay? Now, when I was there, this had this little thing, yeah, that I didn't, I know I got it, brought it up here, but it has our, oh, there it is.
You got about a minute.
Okay, I'm gonna quit. It has this picture, okay? This is inside that bowl, so there is the code for this one, for that side. Now the other side has 4 fingers sticking like this. So that's all I'm gonna tell you at this time, but I've got a lot more of it. But think about the colors, because if you'll come by, I'll show you part of the color scheme that's in one of the books to verify what I'm trying to tell you, that the colors have a lot to do with it. The end.
Now there's a guy that realizes that you got to put the puzzle pieces together before you can see the big picture. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I can't hear. Hey, anybody up there in the studio?
Get closer to the mic, I guess.
It's on.
Just gotta get closer to the mic.
I'm pretty close. I almost broke my teeth out once doing a performance. There we go. Now, so this is a lesson. All you want to come up and share, you gotta make love to the microphone. Anybody else want to share a story? Come on down.
They keep telling me stop
Okay.
pushing.
Go ahead and sit down.
Fix.
Can you get within 2 inches?
Who are you and where are you from?
Okay, my name is Mel Child. I live in Peterson. So,
Yeah, yeah.
do we want an alien story or do we want a Bigfoot story? Both. Okay, so I'm gonna do the alien one, but you're gonna have to help me. But let me start with the Bigfoot one. Okay, so I was under my table and I'm dusting. I'm just dusting. Oops, sorry. And someone comes in. I'm getting my bathroom tile, my floor tile, and we're getting our carpet cleaned. And one of the guys that came in, his name was, I don't know if I can say his name, but Brent is the first name. Brent B, I won't say his whole name. And he comes in and he says, hey, and he goes, Mel, did Lon ever tell you the time that we saw Bigfoot? I didn't believe in Bigfoot, okay? I'm like, okay, there goes another person with attention, wants attention, you know? And I said, Lon, come down. So Lon comes down. And he goes, so Lon's walking. He's walking into the living room. And Brent goes, hey Lon, do you remember the time we saw Bigfoot? This is Lon. He's walking. He's walking in and he goes, and he just freezes. And I go, oh my gosh, he saw Bigfoot. And then, so, you want to come down and tell the other story, the rest of the story? So, it was on a scouting trip. 2 weeks later, our friend Earl comes over and says, I was talking to our scoutmaster and I found out You guys saw Bigfoot. Lon had never talked to the Scoutmaster in decades. And he didn't talk to him. He didn't know that the Scoutmaster saw Bigfoot too. He just know that him and his 2 other friends saw him.
Yep, we'll keep this in the time limit, so we'll make it quick.
Talk close.
So her part of the story validates this story that I saw Bigfoot. So anyway, what happened was we were going to go on our 3rd 50-mile hike. My scout troop 290. We did a 50-mile hike every year, 50, 60 mile. This hike, we were going to start at Moon Lake. So we're going to start at Moon Lake. We're going to go up over Red Knot Pass, right here, and down into Wyoming. So we always called this the epic hike of 290 because we had all kinds of crazy things happen on this hike. This hike took place the 1st of June. Okay, so everybody here knows that the 1st of June is the runoff season and the rivers are just roaring. And so we had to cross the river several times and we almost lost some boys doing that. But anyway, on the third day, we were reaching up towards the summit of Red Knot Pass. And me and a couple of my friends, a couple of other scouts, decided that we would go way ahead of the main troop. We had about, I'd say, 15 boys and 2 scout leaders. So we took off way ahead and we came to this fork in the trail. One trail went this way, the other trail went that way. And we actually took the right trail that we were supposed to go on, but because it was early in the spring, at the top of the mountain was all these glaciers. So for that time, we took the wrong fork. And we went up and we got up onto these glaciers. We had our big packs on and everything. We got up on this glacier, and I guess glaciers start melting from the center. And we started falling through these glaciers where our feet were just dangling. So we decided we better stop and look around, see what we need to do to get out of this situation. So we stopped up on these glaciers and we looked across the canyon and we could see the rest of our scout troop coming up the other trail on the other side of the canyon.
You can't talk loud here.
And the scout leader was right out in
here.
front. Our scout leader was like 6'3", so he was a pretty big guy.
In the auditorium, you hear?
We looked up in front of the scout leader,
I'm in the middle
about
of
200 feet
meeting.
or so,
Are you here?
250 feet. And we saw this great
Come out.
big man-looking figure taking these huge strides, and his arms were real long, and they were going like this. And we're sitting there looking at this thing, and all of a sudden, this creature, whatever they are, it had, I'll describe it a little bit, it had long, black, flowing hair, long arms, like I said, and we could tell that it was super tall, super large. We were comparing it with our scout leader, who was 6'3", and it was at least a couple feet taller than him. And so all of a sudden, this creature, as he was walking, he turns to look at us. He didn't turn his neck, he turned his whole torso. And when he looked at us, there was a telecommunication between us where he communicated to us that he knew that we were watching him. And that made the hair on the back of our heads just stand up. So, anyway, so that's what happened. All 3 of us saw that, and my scout leader saw Bigfoot too, as well. So that's what took place.
You know, I kind of figure if anybody shares a Bigfoot story, I've got to come and share one too. And this had happened 2 years ago, right up close to Moon Lake. You know, there's a little campsite just before the bridge, and you go over the bridge, and then it's a couple of miles, and you go into Moon Lake. Well, I set up a camper trailer. It's one of these pop-up with the tarp on the sides, and the bungee cable that holds the side tarp to the bed frame was no good. And so I had gone camping with my dog, and she was laying on the bed with me, and she rolled over and fell right out of bed onto the ground. And so I knew I had to fix that, but I didn't have time. I didn't have a cable that hooked up to keep me from falling on the ground, and it didn't matter much to me, so I parked my camper up there, and I went to sleep. Now, it's at least a king-size bed in one of those things, and it's a long bed, and all I needed was just that little piece out of the middle. And so I slept right there, just walked up, laid down, and went to sleep. And my head was against the side tarp and the screen and window that was there in the front of the camper. Well, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I heard what sounds like fingernails running along the screen of the window. And I'm thinking, what the heck is that? And it woke me right up, and it's coming closer and closer and closer, and all of a sudden, a great big hand put its right over my skull and pushed me back in my bed. I lost it. Literally lost it. And I had to change my clothes, and I didn't dare do anything. I did not dare move for probably a half hour. I was just scared. Enter the word. That's how bad it was. And that's a true story. And I tell you, if you ever get a camper that has that bungee cord around it, well, fix the cord so you can sell the camper.
My name is Douglas Haas. I'm out from California. And Dan Dillman, he's based in California. I got to get to know him, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that. Went to his UFO expo he held at the Ball Theater in San Leandro a long time ago. I've been to Buried Treasure and stuff. But the stories I want to share real quick. Can you hear me? Okay, one's called Snakehead Point. And then I learned this one from an early UFO contactee movement guy. He's kind of a guru, and he led people down to this place in the North Fork of the American River Gorge, really rugged country east of Sacramento. And the stories were there was a buried pyramid there, and UFOs would use it as a gravitational guidance to enter and exit our planetary gravitational field. And so I was fascinated by this, and I went down there myself several times. And so I wrote the story in this book I presented on this buried pyramid at Snakehead Point, a forgotten tale from the early UFO contactee movement. And there is something going on down there. There's some sort of energy field vortex there going on. The claim is there's a pyramid that was built there, who knows, a million years ago, buried in rubble. So you can't see it, although there's this strange pyramid-shaped rock formation called Snakehead Point. You can see it from the Transcontinental Railroad line. If you know what you're looking for, the California Zephyr goes right over it. And I only found that out recently. Well, actually, I rode the train through there finally when you can see it. So anyway, the other one is there's a bunch of people up at Clear Lake that have been looking for a vast cavern system inside Mount Kanaktai. Mount Kanaktai is the volcano overlooking Clear Lake. It's California's, I think it's largest freshwater lake along with Tahoe. It's a really ancient lake. And the Indian legends is there's little people living inside a vast cavern inside the mountain. And early pioneers reported dropping items in these vent holes, and they would come out at the bottom of the volcano 2 days later, because there's underground streams within this volcano. So they know something's going on inside the mountain. There is some sort of giant cavern, but they have not been able to get inside the mountain yet. And the story of this is described in the Kanaktai Project, the source book. I just reprinted this a few days ago. I have a couple copies in my car, fresh from the printer. If it is ever accessed, it'll probably be the largest cavern in the western United States. And one final thing, the person who got the bug to get in there, his name was Robert Zalewski. He was a reconnaissance pilot in the 14th Air Force in China during World War II. He went over the hump. He did all sorts of stuff. He got an unbelievable story. He later flew 747s, Flying Tiger Airlines, going from California to Guam, and western, mainly carrying troops. And he would fly over Clear Lake and say, I want to build a vacation home there. That's incredible, because he'd see it on the 747 flight to Guam. So he did. He built a fabulous vacation home, and he heard the stories, he heard the legends, and he organized crews. And his own family is angry at him because he spent like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 on this. He hired drill people. He hired a professional mining engineer from Home State Mining Company, all these different professionals. He had even NASA helped him because he's a military veteran, a steam figure. They sent him satellite image from space. I don't know what it was like of Mount Kanaktai, early LiDAR or something like that. Anyway, those are the two stories I wanted to share. If you want to ask me any more questions, I'll be here over the weekend.
Okay, Rocky, would you like to share a story? Come on up.
Cool.
Start with, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Rocky, and I've done Homeland Security for 29 years, and I've done a lot of government investigations and things more along the lines of forensic science. I did John Bonet trial, handwriting analysis, those type of things, and we always kept within our own professional realm of discussion. And things like UFOs and Bigfoot and whatever, we were just discouraged to talk about, share with others. And so with recently moving here to Utah, I've experienced something, and I've talked to a lot of my colleagues and friends in Colorado, and I guess they're so doped up on pot and mushrooms, they say, cool man, tell me another story. And if these aren't stories, I mean, I really had to deal with what I was going to share. And it's been weighing on my mind for a while, and I think you're the open market that I can tell, and you guys would appreciate what I have to say. So when I came out to Utah, I went ahead and bought some property up on the bench, and I have an open mind because of my line of investigation and that type of thing. And when people said UFOs, Skinwalker Walk Ranch, I was like, oh yeah, cool. I look up a lot. And one particular day I came up with we live off grid, by the way. And I came up with my service dog, and when I get up here, I take her vest off and I want her to be a dog. I want her to run and enjoy and have a good time. So, as usual, I take her vest off and she's running around in the sage and covers 40 acres in 40 seconds, you know, and having a ball. This particular day, I had just parked my RV and let her go for a run. And mind you, she's a service dog. She's certified. She's not a comfort dog. She saved my life 3 times. She's very precious, very keen, very sensitive. So as I was putting stuff away, she comes running up to the RV and she's just whining and whimpering, and that's not in her nature. I'm like, okay, girl, what's wrong? So she wanted in the RV real bad, so I opened the door and let her in. And I'm looking on ground level. Well, there's nothing any taller than this. There aren't any billboards. There aren't any buildings, mountains, anything out there. Sky is just as blue as could be. And so I'm looking around, maybe there's a snake, maybe there's a coyote, maybe there's something that spooked her. So I'm scanning the ground level, and I don't see anything. She's still whimpering and carrying on like crazy, so I go back into the RV and I said, "It's okay, girl, you saved my life 3 times. I got this one. This one's on me." So I grab my handgun and my phone and I calm her down and I go back outside again and I'm continuing my scan on ground level and I don't see anything. The hair's standing up on my arms right now. So I raise my view and there in front of me is a white orb in the sky. And there's no other explanation of what it could be other than this white orb. It's not a cloud, it's not a plane, it's not a billboard, it's not a tree. And as I'm looking at it, it's pulsing real slow. And as it is pulsing in and out, it's floating. And I'm like, oh my God, my heart is beating like crazy. And I've never been scared like that in all my years of my exposure to weird stuff. And I go back in and I calm her down again. Her name is Duchess. And I said, "It's okay, girl, it's okay." So I go back out and I said, with my camera, I take a picture of it. And then I said, from my experience, people will say that's been photoshopped. So I walk 20 feet over to the side and I get a different angle of it and take a picture of it. As I'm standing there looking at it, it stops in the sky. It doesn't fall. It's not pulsing anymore. And all of a sudden it goes, it's gone. Wow. Now I watch the sky regularly. And I thank you for listening, because this is a load off my chest, because I tell people about it and they say, "You're nuts. You're crazy," but I put the pictures on Facebook and they're there. So I just wanted to thank you guys for giving me an opportunity to share that and get it off my chest. Thank you.
Now I feel better. That thing, I was worried somebody's going to trip over it. It's over 100 years old. My grandfather invented it. And he invented this really strange petroleum dowsing instrument. And it worked. I mean, he went all over Utah, Idaho, Nevada, Colorado, and he was finding so much oil. And he would tell his son, my dad, "You can't believe how much oil is under the ground. There is so much, we'll never run out." And that was back in the 1930s that he was saying that to my dad. So now they're saying, gosh, there's so much oil under this ground, it's more than in Saudi Arabia. So I think it's these instruments, a lot of people don't believe in them. But if they've been around them enough and used them enough and see them used enough, they really do work. Now, I was reminded of my dog saved my life, and it's not really a mining story, but it is a story about if you're a a prospector, if you're looking, walking around out there in the forest, and I just want to warn you, you got to be careful. Because there's some cartoon characters out there in the forest that don't act at all like they act on the TV. And I'll tell you about one of them. I told my dog, saddle up. That meant he's going to jump up on my ATV, put his paws on the handlebar, and he's going to take me for a drive. And we decided to go looking for moose. Now, I live up there in the mountains where it's almost off-grid, and sometimes it is because our power goes out so often. But I tell you, I was riding my ATV. Everything was fine. I make a slight little right turn, and I see movement off to my left. And I turned my head just in time to have a moose's head that had to have been this big. And that moose struck me right on the shoulder. It broke my shoulder, broke my clavicle, broke all my ribs, it broke my back, and it broke my hip. Then it came around and faced me and looked me right in the eyes, and I'm looking in those beautiful brown eyes, stunned. If I had had a Colt 45 on my hip, I wouldn't have been able to use it. I was totally stunned. And then I saw that moose's head go back, and I watch Popeye cartoons. I know what that means. That moose head butted me right across my forehead and sent the darkness of forever into my being. And then, after it had knocked me out, it tried to break my neck by picking me up with its teeth, buried its teeth in my skull, and picked me up a little bit. My legs were straddling the fuel tank on the ATV, and it started shaking me, and it couldn't break my neck because I wasn't jiggling that much. And so it just picked me up and threw me 20 feet. Then it came over the ATV, tipping it over onto its top, and that's when my dog took over. My dog saved my life. It got a broken hip and a broken leg, but it survived, the same as I survived. I was life-flighted to U of U Medical Center and was in intensive care for 6 days. So, when you're out prospecting and you see bullwinkle, don't go up to it and try to take a selfie. It just won't work out too well for you. Now, is there anybody else want to share a story? Come on down. Good. State your name and tell us a story.
My name is Bill Wagner. I'm from Montana. A little closer. How's that, guys?
Guy. See, I don't want to hit you in the nose.
You're all right. So, Bill Wagner from Montana. I got 2 or 3 Bigfoot stories. I've never seen a Bigfoot. I've seen eyes. They were red eyes, and they were yay big and about that far apart. They didn't glow until I hit them with my light. And back in the day, it was a mag light. That was the gold standard for a flashlight whenever you're hunting. And that thing was about from here across the arena from me. It was dark, and I was trailing a dead shot deer my son had shot. And I was trying to track this deer down. And I lifted it. It was the most surreal thing I've ever been through in my life. I crawled, it was down on river bottom. I crawled into a patch of ground that I wasn't supposed to be in, but I was following this deer. And I looked up and I shined the light around. And there were deer everywhere, guys. It was the craziest thing. It was like they were all in a trance. And there was bucks following does, and there was does and fawns, and there was other bucks that were just standing around. And I kept, where's my deer? Where's the deer I'm looking for? So I crawled a little bit further, and I lifted up my light, and I shined around. And I'm going to tell you, the deals you see on TV where they're taking a flashlight and shining like this, you're looking at Sasquatch's junk whenever you're shining a light like this. You need to look up here. Those things are huge, huge. But I hit him with my light, and just his eyes would glow red, and he would stop and he'd look at me, and he'd go back and he'd take another step, and it was so black that I was reaching with my arm with the light, trying my best to get the extra foot to see it. And I couldn't see anything but those eyes. But they'd stop and they'd look at me, and I thought, over the years, has it been an owl? Has it been a moose? It wasn't any of that. And it was my story, and I could lie if I wanted to and say, I saw him, my deer was floating across there underneath two big red eyes. But that isn't the way it went down. It was just two big, huge red eyes. That's that story. One more for this guy. I own what's called a jumping jack trailer. I don't know if you guys have seen them. They're a little trailer, and they've basically got a little wall tent on them that pops up. Cooler than heck. Awesome little campers. We were elk hunting in Montana. My sons were in another tent. Dad had to stay in the jumping jack because they don't want to hear you in the middle of the night. I was laying in that tent. It was about 4:30 in the morning, and something walked up to the camper. The wind had just started to blow, son. Walked up to the camper, and it scratched all the way down the side of the camper. And this isn't big, it isn't a huge camper, it's 12 by 10. My head's on the other end, doors up here, went down this side, across the back, and across the other side, and it stopped. And I'm thinking my kids are up. Little buggers are screwing with the old man. So I laid there for a little bit, and whenever you're talking, somebody mentioned they mentally talk to you. This thing said, I'm not going to hurt you. And the only reason I know it was that thing that said it is why in the hell would I ever think I'm not going to hurt you at 4:30 in the morning? Wake up out of a dead sleep and think, something's scratching on the side of my tent, and it's telling me it's not going to hurt me. Now, I believed it because I had a pistol laying on the table. I got out of bed, I went over and I unzipped the door, and I stepped out. My first thoughts were it was brush alongside the tent. The wind was blowing and it was scratching. There was no brush, guys, none at all. And the kids were over snoring in their tent, so it wasn't them. There's other stories. Montana's a good place to look for Bigfoot, but I'll let you go. Thank you, guys.
So I always try to link up stories I hear with stories I've experienced, and it makes me think of my dog. Now, it's not the same dog that saved me from the moose. It's another dog I got about 5 years ago, but they're both Australian Shepherds. I just love that breed. They're manufactured in California, by the way. But anyway, this dog started barking, real vicious barking, as I walked out on the porch of my cabin. Now, I live up in the mountains. My cabin is 93 years old, and it's just a little one-bedroom structure, and my wife and I are so comfortable up there. But my dog has to go out and do its duty. So I open up the door and my dog just goes freeze. He runs down the stairs and it's gone. And it's barking with that deep, throaty, vicious growl. And then I looked and I saw that there was garbage all around my pickup truck. And I'm slapping myself in the head going, oh, you've forgotten to take the garbage down to the dump. Well, a raccoon has gotten into it, no problem. I went back in there and I'm picking up all this garbage. And my dog comes back and she's just all upset. So I get the garbage put away, we go in, have a nice night. But the next night I figure I'm gonna protect my dog. I'm not gonna let it out with no bears out there. So I get a flashlight and I'm scoping through the woods, making sure there's no bears. My dog is standing at the door, she's real obedient. And next thing I know, my flashlight hits a charging black bear that's about 15 feet away from me, and in 2 seconds it's gonna have my throat. And I didn't know what to do, but my dog took over and immediately attacked the bear and ran the bear off. That made that bear so angry, it came back and it sprayed, it sprayed all over our fifth wheel trailer. I had to use a vinegar solution, vinegar and water, and that kind of took care of the odor and the stink. But I'll tell you what, if you're ever up there in the mountains, get a dog. They'll save your life. Anybody else got a story to tell? Come on down. Oh, we got one here, and then you're next. And how about you, Mark? Okay. And then we'll have
Hi everyone, my name is Lisa. I'm a first timer.
Where are you from, Lisa?
Well, interestingly enough, I was raised in San Leandro, California, born in Oakland, very dangerous place to go now. And Chabot College, spent a year there when Tom Hanks was there, and graduated from BYU, and then 40 years later, decided to get another degree at UVU. Anyway, I've been chased by a bear. I've been bumped by sharks and trampled by moose. But what I want to tell you about today is an experience I had when I worked up at Sundance, and I saw Bigfoot. I'm 100% sure that's what I saw. Oh, and by the way, we used to take our family reunions up at Clear Lake. But 3 of my 4 grandparents are from Utah. And I feel like I can claim Utah. I'm living in Alpine, Utah now. But one day when I was driving up to my job up at Sundance, I worked at a place called Cirque Lodge. It was about 11:30 at night, and I noticed a large figure. Everybody know where that tunnel is right before you get to Sundance? Y'all know where that's at?
Yeah.
Well, I had to go through the tunnel before I turned left to go to my job. And there's this large figure. And I thought Bigfoot was kind of playful. But I saw him, I'm assuming it's a him, very large, all black hair. And he's at the end of the tunnel. And he sees me and he turns. And I'm, knowing what I'm seeing. And so he goes to the side and he's standing really stiff like this. I don't think he knew if I saw him or not, but he's trying to stand stiff and straight so that I won't notice him, I guess, at the other side. And somewhere deep in me, I knew I was seeing something spectacular, but it made me very nervous. I started shaking. And I was afraid to look at him for fear of, I guess, what I would see. So I just tried to pretend like I didn't see him. But I noticed that when I got to where I was going to turn, that he turned and went back. And I've tried to tell a few people that I saw Bigfoot, and the response is, oh, that's nice. Very few people ask questions. I figure if I would tell anybody about that experience, I guess you all would be receptive of that. But I guess what I want to say is when you see things, and I've also seen a UFO in the Alpine Mountains, when you see those things, don't doubt yourself. And I guess be careful where you share, because most of the people that I've told didn't ask questions, and I don't feel like they believe me. But I feel like this is an audience where you would believe me. And, you know, stay open to this world. There are so many mysteries that we have yet to discover. And just believe when you see. Don't self-doubt. That's all I wanted to share.
Oh, there's somebody shorter than me. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's great. That's okay, it's good. Thanks, I'm Shauna Cox from Kanab, Utah. And I don't know, after this gentleman spoke over here, any of you know who Phil Schneider is? Phil Schneider, right? And I've been with him when we've seen that evidence that he showed about Area 51 down in New Mexico, and when he worked in Mexico and he worked into those tunnels and he saw the graves and the different aliens that were in the underground tunnels. And they lead to Area 52 and Nevada, Area 51. So I've seen that. Did you guys see some of that metal that he had that was in Roswell? But he was carrying it around, and he said that they picked it up from the crash site. And he told us about the different aliens. And so I went to New Mexico where they had the shaft that he worked in, because when he showed us this, I had it on we were doing, back in those days, we were recording, but we put them on, they're like a DVD disc, and you burned your own, right? So when I burned it onto this DVD, and I was in my backpack with my computer, and I have a lot of evidence things. And when I got arrested in Oregon, I told my husband when we were in the Mellier refuge, I needed my computer. And he sent the computer, and it had all of these DVDs and stuff that I did in presentations inside my bag. And that one just says Phil on it, you know, plain wrapper. And when I got arrested, they took that computer bag and they went through everything, except they never looked at those ones that were home recorded DVDs. I think they would have arrested me. I mean, I think they would have kept me in jail. But because I know that they killed him right after that. And he shared that stuff and said he had divorced his wife and that he had got her a different apartment and stuff like that to keep her safe because they were after him. So anyway, that wasn't the only story I was going to tell you. But I wanted to tell you about the story. One day, and I have a lot of children, we have 13, and I was in Kanab, and I was coming home, and it was about 7:30 in the evening, and we lived 10 miles out of town. And as I was coming up 89A, we looked over into the ranchos, and up there on their hill, it was just getting dark. And all of a sudden, we saw this big light right above the hill on the western sky. And it was like a big round spotlight. And there are no houses there. There is nothing in that area. And I said, oh, we got to check this out. So I have a whole car full of kids, and we drive out as fast as I can to get to see where that light source is coming from. And we see this spaceship, right? We can see that light coming down. We can see it spinning. And just as I get to the bottom of the hill, suddenly it goes away, right? I said, you all saw that, right? I wasn't really crazy. You all saw that, right? Anyway, there's many different things that happen to us in our life, and sometimes we can tell things and sometimes we can't tell things. But we know that they're real and we know that they're there. We're not alone.
Hello, my name is Shirley White, and I moved to the UNS in 2017. I live off-grid. My story kind of starts in, can't hear? My story, since that gentleman said Sacramento, California, I'm from Woodland. And so the entities that I see are animalistic looking. And as a little girl, they would come out of my mirror, they would run down the halls, but they've never scared me. So when I first moved, I live off-grid and I live in shipping containers, just me and my dog. And I moved there to find out who I am, to discover life and a spiritual awakening. So I've written a book and it talks about my adventure with the entities and what I've gone through. When I first moved there, it was negative energies there. The electricity wouldn't work, and I finally got mad, and I started doing rituals. I'd do sage, such like that. Then the entities started talking to me telepathically. So on the property, there's portals. So I have hundreds and so many pictures. So when the portal opens, this is a picture that, I don't know if you can see it, but this is a book cover, okay? So I have 300 consecutive pictures of these. So it just goes, and it has a face on it, and it comes out of the sun. So, and here's another one where you can see the portal is open. The sun gets a round circle in it, and then objects come out, just numerous different things. Some of them I haven't made, like these kind of things, I'm not sure what they are, yet the entities, they speak to me. So the flying rods, okay, here's a couple of the flying rods. When I first started seeing them, I kept feeling water, just water, like fish. So needless to say, that's where my well is now, where the flying rods are. You can't see it real well, but this is like a figure. I get a lot of faces that look at me, and this is just one picture, but I have numerous pictures that create this one, like where it starts, and then this is, and this one, when I seen it, is like, here's looking at you. That's just kind of what they tell me. This little guy right here looks like a little Santa Claus. He's the one that told me to write my book. So, then I have like serpent-looking things that come there. I have pictures that are in my dog's mouth. My dog has taught me a lot about the entities as well. Reading energy, let me put it that way. It's all about reading energy. This picture I took when I was just on a walk, I feel them. I don't use any instruments, I don't use anything like that. My body just tells me where they are, and then I take a picture with my camera. So, and I have this one that's for me. This one's kind of interesting. It's a native face, and then you can see the aliens in the sides of the pictures. So it's just exciting to be out there. I haven't told very many people about this just because of the responses you get from people. But I have so many pictures, and they're my friends. It's just me and my dog and my cat out there. And I lived in solidarity for 5 years. I used black hoses to heat my water, had no heating, no plumbing, nothing like that. Frostbitten toes, glad to have heat now. So, but it's just been an exciting adventure. And so I just, when I heard that you guys were gonna be here, I thought, what a perfect opportunity to share my story, so.
How's that? Does that work? No? All right. So one of the really cool things about putting these on is like Terry always says, it's the people you get to meet. And we've been doing this for 26 years, and I've got to know a lot of people really, really well. We had a speaker come, he came twice, it's about a dozen years ago. We had, and the guy really had me going, I tell you, I was pretty excited. He was he had a boat, and he had it in the Dominican Republic, and he was a treasure hunter. So we had him come to we used to call it the powwow, and I'm about the last one that still calls it that, because I just can't break it. Anyway, I was talking to him before we started up, and any divers here, anywhere? Couple. I ate it with a spoon. I loved it. And I was talking to him, and I said, God, I'd love to come to the Dominican. That's where he was at, and dive on your wreck, your wrecks. And he goes, yeah, why not? And it's kind of like, it went just like this. Really? Are you kidding? You're not messing with me. So he said, no, you can come. So I said, I'm coming. So I come home that night when the powwow was over, and I told Laurie, I said, well, I'm going to the Dominican Republic and diving a shipwreck. What? You're going where? And I said, yeah. And so I called a couple of friends, and one was able to go. So we go there, and we meet up there in the Dominican, which is an absolute third world country. Very, very, very nice people. So we make our way to where his boat is, and we go out on the boat. And it was a little bay, I don't know, like this third over. And so we pulled the boat in there, and the one thing that's really interesting, the Dominicans, they'll hire a lot of the local villages, people, to come and dive do the diving for them. And, or at least some of the diving, and they're really good divers. And they're fearless divers. And diving is not hard, but you gotta know a few of the things or you can dive. And these villages that these people live in, there's guys that are crippled all in every single one of these villages. And they're messed up for the rest of their lives because they'll embolize, they'll hold their breath on the way up, which is, And so we dove off the ship, not a ship, I mean, big boat to me in Utah. And it was just it was old as dirt. And it wasn't very deep, it was like 15, 18 feet. We dived down, and you follow the great big suction hose down. And they said, now dang it, you get on the bottom and you sit and push the dirt into the suction hose. And they said, keep your dang hands away from it because it'll suck you right in. I mean, I don't know if it'd kill you, but it'd sure bugger you up. And so we're doing it, and I'm paying attention, watching my arm, filling the dirt in, holding the hose open under my arm. And after 10 minutes or something, I look around, criminy, I'm 30 feet deep from the surface because we dug that much out, which really surprised me. Well, we come up, and it goes through a screen, all the dirt that they pull up, and it looked like a rock to me that was kind of flat. And they were all excited, and I go, what? Are you kidding me? And they call them cookies. And these coins, they get so much crustacean on them, they just look like a rock. And they had found one when we was there. They found one, and they were all excited, and I just couldn't get it. But they opened it up a little bit, and I got to see it. But the interesting thing is, when you go to these countries like this, I don't know what U.S. waters are. I kind of doubt that they go to this extreme, but for you to go out there, you've got to have a permit, and then you've got to take like a National Guard kit with you, or an Army guy from the Dominican. And so he gets to see absolutely every single thing that comes out of the water. And they'll check it off, they'll put it in baggies, and everybody, all these guys will sign it. And then it goes back to a clearinghouse, sort of, which would be sort of like our Fort Knox, to me. And so we went in there, only been just a short time, don't want to take a lot of time. So all this stuff ends up back in the capital city. We went there, and the funny thing is, the guy we was with told the people that was running it, he said, well, these guys are from the Discovery Channel. And it's kind of like, and so, I mean, they were just like, can I carry you over there so you don't have to walk? No, can I get you some water? And I'm like, yeah, sure, give me some water. But you'd go into the great big huge rooms, and they would have, when they pick up metal things, I'm not going to get this right, but the salt will take place, it takes the carbon or something out of the steel. So they'll fall apart when they get out of the ocean water. And I'm probably not saying exactly what happened, but that's what happens. And I went into, they had these great big baths with fresh water, and put a little bit of an electrical charge in it. And they had some anchors off of some of these ancient boats, Spanish pirate ships, whatever. And these things would be like 12 feet tall. And they would go 20 feet long, and it was pretty cool. But I've been lucky because I've been able to meet a lot of these people. And it's like Terry and I said in some of Terry's videos, you know, it's not just us, there's a lot of interesting, super interesting people there. And if you go and take the time to talk to them, you know, I've heard people that have been invited to different ranches and different things just because they have met them in our deal. So, there you go.
Anybody else want to share? Come on ahead, and we'll get you second. He was quicker with the hand up.
We can trade. I haven't practiced it.
Let's see if I can figure this out. A little bit taller. So my name's Levi Harris. I'm a friend of Lon Child. I actually wrote his book of all the experiences at Three Lakes Ranch, if you're familiar with Three Lakes Ranch and Montezuma's Treasure, and there's been a bunch of documentaries about that. Lon and I have worked together over the years, and my friend Landon, to kind of get all the information about it, all the history and whatnot. So I won't spoil anything about that because Lon and Dan are doing their presentation tomorrow. But if anybody's interested in a cheaper PDF version of the book so that you can spend less money on it, and it's coming in, it's in color, then just let me know. I have a QR code on my phone, nothing super official, but just come find me and bug me. But today's story, because I'm not going to give any spoilers away, actually comes from Peru in 2017. Treasure hunting has been a thing that I've been into for a long time. I got into it kind of young, I guess, just in college. And this story has treasure and it has aliens connected to it. So I'll try to be quick about it. But there's this legend of a place called Paititi. So there's tons of gold city legends in the Amazon, and you know, we've all seen Indiana Jones. We've all been captured by this kind of imaginative place where the Spaniards came in and they killed all the natives, and they got a bunch of gold from the Incas and the Aztecs and Tenochtitlan. They destroyed that, and they also destroyed the Incan cities of Cusco and Lima and these sort of places. But one of the legends is that one of the leaders of the Inca, Inkari was his name, built a city in the jungle. So the Incas didn't live in the jungle. They live in a part of Peru that's like super deserted. And it's desert-y, I should say. If you've been to Peru, most of it's desert. The jungle's a little bit past the mountains. But supposedly, the Inca escaped and made the city of riches in the jungle, and that's where some of them went when the Spanish came in and conquered. So the thing about Paititi is I decided I was going to go look for it. In 2017, I was going to go to Peru. And the person that was kind of leading the research was a French archaeologist, and I don't know how to pronounce his name, but his name, it's the way I would say it is Thierry Camin. I don't know how to say it exactly. But anyway, he was the person on the internet who had all these theories about where Paititi was. And it's kind of in the most inaccessible place in the Amazon. A lot of the Amazon's real flat. Not that any of it's accessible, but in this kind of eastern part of Peru, there's huge mountains, and it's just really, really difficult to get to it. So I was thinking, if I can find this guy and talk to him, then maybe I have it in. So I traveled, I had some contacts in Lima, and I went there and stayed with them, and then I traveled to Cusco. I got super sick. They gave me an injection in my butt cheek to fix it. I don't know what was wrong with me, but I felt better after that. And so I get to Cusco, and I go into the Ministerio de Cultura, and I can speak Spanish, so I went up, and I was just like, hey, I'm writing a book, which was technically true. Are there any archaeologists that can show me around? And she was like, oh, I have a friend who's an archaeologist, and she directed me to one person, and then I went to that person to talk to him, and he's like, oh, I have other friends that are on active digs. And so I was actually able to find my way into an archaeological dig that was closed to the public. That was maybe one of the sites. They had found a golden staff buried there, which kind of goes together with the founding myth of the Inca. So there were some cool archaeological discoveries, but I finally got a message back from Thierry Hamin when I was on my way back, this French archaeologist that was there. He didn't answer me the whole time that I was there. I didn't make it out to the jungle or Paititi, but the reason why he wasn't looking for Paititi anymore is because he had found one of the tridactyl alien mummies from Peru. I don't know if any of you guys are following this. Certainly some of these bodies are fake, some aren't. Some are made from actual mummified material, and they've actually got the top scientists in Mexico and in Peru that are analyzing these bodies. This archaeologist was the very, kind of one of the first people that ever found one of these, and it was all happening, and now it's big news. So I forgave him for not being available to take me to the city, but someday we'll go back and someday we'll find Paititi, maybe when the alien thing is figured out. So that's my story.
Okay, anybody else?
Then you got some people over here too, Dave. So.
Okay. You're next. You're after him.
Hello, my name is Janelle Murphy, and in the native way, we introduce ourselves with our clan. And so I was born for the Belladonna, and that's on my mother's side, and my father is Totokoji, which is the Bitterwater clan. So my father was from Arizona, and so every summer we would go down to Arizona, and this is my Dowsing rod story. I went down to Arizona and I would visit my uncle on the reservation, and he lived in a hogan. And the story goes that my grandmother had a sister, I guess you can say sister, but it was really a close friend, who was actually, well, they don't usually mention them, a skinwalker. Her name was Rabbit Woman. And she passed away, and what happens was she got shot. So I guess the police were, after her, they shot a rabbit. When they followed her to her hogan, she was in her human form, and they found her dead. So she, come to find out, never went across. She stayed on the land. So my uncle had told me that up on the south side of where he lived, she had built this snake altar. And so my niece was spiritually gifted, and it seems like I've been around spiritually gifted people all my life. And a friend of mine was very spiritually gifted, so we would talk to the other side all night long. And I would ask questions. I'd ask him about Brewer's Cave, about UFOs and different things like that. Just anything that where the Fremonts went, that's another one. Anything like that. And so I wrote them down in my books, but this was actually the start kind of my spiritual way, if you could say. And so when I went down there, I got my little rods out, and he had told me that story about her. And so I'm like, well, I'm gonna go find that altar. So my niece, who was with me at the time, was spiritually gifted, and she could see and talk to the other side. So we started off, and she had one of the rods and I had one of the rods, and we kept going towards this hill. And as we were continuing to go to the hill, my rod flipped and it went into a juniper tree. So I thought, well, maybe it's in the juniper tree. So I went under the juniper tree and looked, and it wasn't there. But something was there. And so I got out and I asked it again, where is the pointing in the direction of the snake altar? And so we kept going and we kept going, and we got on the top of this hill, and I could tell that, like, from behind the hill, it looked dark spiritually to me, and I had felt like I wasn't supposed to go there. But when I got on top of the hill, it pointed to another juniper tree on the top. And my niece had told me that there was a lady there, and she was speaking Navajo, and she was speaking like really evil. But she actually had hair hanging down from her. Because in the native way, when you're a skinwalker, you take people's hair. So, like, in the native way, when you get your hair cut, you make sure you take every piece of it and burn it so the bad side can't get it. There's just some different things like that that our people have different things that they do to keep them safe. And so she was talking, and we knew that that's who it was. And so it was Rabbit Woman, that she is still on the property and she's still there. And then I just decided to leave it alone because I felt like it would probably be better after I kind of felt that darkness. And then another time we went back and I brought my niece again, and I was in the Homeland with my uncle, and I had my dowsing rods, and I went outside and she said, "I'm bored." And I'm like, I knew what that meant. She wanted to go ghost hunting again. So we got those again, and we started going towards that same place. And as I had the rod in my hand, it flipped behind me. And as it pointed at me, I could feel somebody behind me. But this time it wasn't Rabbit Woman. It was, she said, there was a man in a buffalo, great big buffalo skin, who was there. And I think he was trying to keep us from going there. And so I kind of just decided to give up from that. But I've had a lot of different things that, like doing house cleansings and different things, and also being able to know kind of about UFOs and kind of what their reasoning are and why some of them are here. And so actually for me, you know what, it's been a great life, full of lore, full of adventures, full of everything like that, and I love that. I have a passion for that, and I actually do healing too, but so that's my story.
We gotta talk about the Bitterwater plan.
Okay, that's good. First of all, I've just had an experience. What I came here for was hear some of these experiences. That's great. My name is Stephen Bluminger. Right now I'm in Ohio. I grew up in California, Huntington Beach. I should give you a little bit of color about kind of a loose person I was. But my story really began only a couple of years ago, because I am the great nephew of, many of you know, heard of the Doc Noss story, Victoria Peak. And Dave was my great aunt. And I can remember sitting with her. And she, first of all, she could tell stories. If you look at any of the shows, you have videos of her, she could tell a story, but better when you're one-on-one. I could sit there and just wide-eyed, and she even got me drinking coffee in the morning time. And our family was very close. In the show, or if you know anything, why was Babe, she had children mention them, they weren't with her. It's because her daughters are with my grandparents. And so her daughters, my mother, became very close to me. We're always that way. So that, my story really kind of gained energy when they started filming the documentary for Discovery Channel, because of my cousin Terry Delonis, who really pushed everything about the Victoria Peak and Doc Noss. Was in a position to continue that. So I've sort of taken that on, and that energy from the show has spurred me to move forward. And why I'm here is, I want to hear if someone has some stories, a little tidbit of information like I heard just a little while ago, that in my mind connects what I know. I'll give you an example, quickly, I hope. We'd forgotten that we had an interview from a gentleman who flew an airplane. Now, if you watch the show, it alludes to the fact that, actually it's fact, I shouldn't have said that, alludes to the government taking material out of Victoria Peak down into Mexico, flying it up to Canada. We have documentation for that. We lose the documentation as it goes overseas. We have the interview of the pilot that was contracted to fly that. Listen to it. There's a story, there's an adventure that will be moving on forward. But what about the plane? How do you verify the story? Well, first of all, he actually went to some property where he thought he had something, wasn't allowed to. One verification. Second verification, I need to find the plane. So there is a website to go to that shows ownership records of military airplanes. So knowing what I know, this individual was very good friends with the president of Pemex, who became the president of Mexico, alluded that he had a plane, found a B-24 that was under ownership of Pemex, and they used it to transport some of their men into the field. Okay, so there's the ownership. Then the ownership went to what was then, not too long ago, the Confederate Air Force. As now, I can't even remember the name of it now, it's a museum. They restored the plane. I found where the plane was going to be. So I go there, and I actually flew in this plane, thinking, could it be a plane that flew material out of Mexico to Canada? So I'm talking to two pilots. They say, come back tomorrow, and I'm going to interview them. Go back the next day, and talking to them, they both looked at me and said, Steve, we think this is the plane. You know the history of the Diamond Lil? I said, yeah, I looked it up. This is your plane. Engine bay had been modified, the bomb bay had been modified, all leads to that it could be. All because of doing some research and following some tidbits of information. And I hope to glean some of that from some of you here. Maybe not today, tomorrow, or forward, but that's why I'm here. The main reason I'm here is that guy. I've talked to so many people say, why are you here, Terry? So really, I guess that's why I'm here.
I'm glad you're here.
So if I haven't said it before, I want to apologize. It took me so long to get here, 69 years. Knock on wood, I can come here again to be here and hear your stories. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Don Gady Jr. I'm from Duncan, Oklahoma. I want to tell you a story, and the story is this man encourages me very much, and I'm pointing at Terry Carter. I've been a detective most of my life. I learned it from my daddy. My daddy showed me and told me some things. That's your dowsing rod. I was without my metal detector. I was going around a property in Duncan, Oklahoma with a weed eater. That was my dowsing rod, apparently. I don't know if any of y'all can see this. I showed it to a couple of people back there. So it may be fake as hell, but it's priceless to me, okay? I showed it to a gentleman over there in the corner. He's gonna bring an SRP gun. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to share interest with each and every one of you, whether it's Bigfoot, aliens, or the Anunnaki, the strive for gold, the quest that we go through to look for this gold. Who instilled it into our hearts? And why is it there, and why are we driven to get this gold? The only thing that I know is this coin. I can pass it around if you want to see it. I trust y'all. Anyway, I noticed whenever I got up, this male stick started wiggling over here. So anyway, y'all have a good day, and greetings from Duncan, Oklahoma.
Oh, the stories that have been brought up tonight, they remind me of stories that have happened to me. I've shared some of them with you. We've got a few more minutes. Are there more people that would like to share stories? Any raise of hands? Well, I want to tell you a story about me. I was 4 years old. My mom had told me not to climb that great big elm tree in the front yard because I'd fall and break my bone. And I had just recently tried to ride a wild stallion against my mother's wishes, and they kicked me off and I got a broken bum. And so I knew all about the pain that would come from getting your bum broke. Well, I probably don't want to tell that story because it's just so sad. But anyway, there's times that I have had experiences that I don't even believe. And this one was when I was 4 years old. I climbed that tree my mom told me not to climb. And there what I did is I grabbed some little stones out of the garden, and I put them in my pocket, and I was going to climb up into that tree and crawl out on the big low-lying branch, and I was going to drop little tiny pebbles on people's heads as they walked under the tree. I thought that'd be so funny. You know, they don't want to touch it for fear a bird had its way with them. And so my mom had forbid me to climb that tree, and there I was climbing out onto that great big branch, and my mother comes out on the porch, and she's looking for me. And she's like, "Davy!" And when she sees me up in the tree, she had a fit. And it made me mad because she was ordering me right this instant to get down out of that tree. Well, I had just barely learned how to climb a tree, and I didn't know how to get down. And so I thought of a word, a special word that my dad used to use when he got frustrated and angry, and I was frustrated and angry, so I said that word, and my mother grabbed her chest and fainted right on the front steps of the house. Well, I didn't know what I'd done. It couldn't be any fault of mine. I was just saying the word my dad used all the time, and I was so worried about my mother, I jumped out of that tree, and I just kept falling and falling and falling. I bet I fell at least that far. And my dad was home, and he heard me as I was rushing up to my mom and go, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." Well, he came out, saw his wife laying there on the porch, asked me what happened, and I, like a 4-year-old, and at that time, my mother woke up, and then she stuck her finger in my dad's nose. Well, not in his nose, but on his nose, and she said, you are the one that taught my sweet, kind, innocent little boy to say naughty words, and you should be punished." Well, after he wiped the blood from his nose, my mother told him that as punishment for him, And punishment for me, he was to take me to the mine with him. The mine? Oh, that's the best punishment a little boy could ever have, is get to go to a mine where there's a big, long, dark tunnel and dynamite. And it's just so exciting. And I jumping up and down. I ran over to my dad's Jeep and I opened up the door. I jumped in on his front seat and I'm bouncing up and down. I want to go to the mine. And I broke one of the springs in the seat of the Jeep. And when my dad drove me to the mine, he had to sit on that spring the whole way, and boy was he cantankerous when we got there. Well, we had a couple that my dad had hired to be caretakers of the mine, make sure people didn't come up and steal stuff like happens every day when we leave stuff around. And Esther King was the camp cook. Her husband, Emmett, was a miner's helper. He didn't know much about mining, and he really didn't know much about helping either, but he came along with Esther. And so my dad decided that he was going to save my mom a lot of trouble. And he would hire Esther to be my babysitter, and I'd be able to go to the mine with my dad every day, and Esther would take care of me. Well, it worked out pretty good for about 2 days, and then I learned that Esther liked to tip the bottle a little bit. She started when the miners would go about 2 miles up the road to the mine, and by the time she was drunk, I was ready to go out and play. So I decided I was going to hike up the road and go visit with my dad. Well, that was a special occasion. It was another story, but this mine trip changed my life. It was the most exciting, fun experience I ever had. And I could actually help my dad do his job. And he decided that the best way to keep me from getting in trouble or have Esther fall asleep and not be able to take care of me while I'm getting bit by a rattlesnake or something, that he decided that he was going to hire me as a miner's helper. So at 4 years old, my dad hired me as a miner's helper, paid me 10 cents a day. That was back in 1954. And I was so proud that I had a job and I could afford to buy my own gum and candy bars. It was so exciting. But I stayed with my dad and worked with my dad, and I got older and older, and by the time I was 14, I was a certified full-fledged miner. I was earning a wage. I thought it was a pretty good wage too, $62.50 a day. That back in 1964. And so I really enjoyed working with my dad. It's the best thing I could have ever done, was to be such a good employee that he'd choose to keep me on. And my dad and I worked together until his death. He was 85 years old and he was still mining. And that's why I say I've been mining for over 70 years, is because I started when I was just 4 years old. And the best thing to do, I think, is to work with your father. And it's an experience I will never forget. The experiences I had as a miner up in the mountains, I've seen lights in the sky just like UFOs and couldn't explain them away. And I've seen shapeshifters. As a matter of fact, my dad's partner was a shapeshifter. He was the nicest man I ever met. He was so funny. He could take jokes that would even make a 4-year-old laugh. And he was such a wonderful man. But one day, I was walking to the miner shack, which was just at the side of the mine rails. And up above the mine tunnel, I heard a loud cracking noise, and there was a huge elk I've never seen an elk this big. Its rack was just tremendous, and it was running straight down the mountain right towards me. And I was just a little whippersnapper, and I just ran as fast as I could to the cabin. I slammed the door, and I was inside that cabin. I was scared to death, and all of a sudden the door burst open, and there was my dad's partner. And I said, "Burl, didn't you see that great big elk?" And I was just like, just being really animated, and he just looked at me so calmly, and he said, "Oh, that was me." Well, I couldn't explain it at that time, so there was another time I was hiking up in the high mountains. This would be kind of northeast of Nephi, and I'd found a real nice runoff pond, and it must have had at least 1 billion tadpoles. And those things, when you come up on the lake and you get a lake full of tadpoles and one starts moving, they all start moving. And there was this great big wave that went across that pond all the way to the other side, and then it came back. I guess they ran out of room to run away, so they had to fill the lake. There were so many tadpoles. And so I went down to the camp and I told Burl about all of the tadpoles. And he says, "Oh gosh, Dave, I'd like to see that. Why don't you take me up there?" So we hiked all the way up the mountain, and it was my second time of the day, and I was tired, and there was still snow on the ground up there. And we flushed up a little fawn as it was running off, and my dad says, "I wonder where its mother is." Well, we kept walking along, and we saw where a cougar had been laying down, and that cougar had got up to chase that fawn, and it had, grabbed a hold of the dirt and the mud and the snow, and you could still see its hair imprints in the snow. And Burl says, "Well, Dave, that's obviously run off to go and get that little fawn. So I tell you what, you stay on this trail, and I'm going to go around on the other side of the pond, and I'll meet you on the other side over there." And I thought, that's the dumbest idea I ever heard. There's no way I wanted to walk down that trail towards that cougar. And but then he just walked away from me, and he started walking around the other side of the pond, and I thought, well, I'm going to meet him on the end of the pond, and that was probably 200-300 feet that I had to walk. I got up there, the end of the pond, and Burl was coming back from down the road a ways, and he says, "Oh, there's 2 cougars. And one got the fawn and it's eating it and waiting for the other to come and join him." And he says, "I think we better go back this way." Well, he pointed the direction to go around the pond the way he came in, and I had to go on the other side of the pond. We're following this cougar's tracks all the way around the pond, and we get to where Burl and I split up and went each of us around the other side, and the footprints in the snow of that cougar turned to boot prints, and they went right back over to where I had been standing. And I didn't know a thing about skinwalkers. I never had heard of them before. But when he said that cougar was waiting for another cougar to go and enjoy a little bit of fawn steak, I knew that it was him that was going to go back and share the meal with that cougar. And that guy was a shapeshifter. I don't care how nice he was. He could turn into something else, just like that. I want to thank everybody for coming out to this open mic tonight. I really enjoyed the stories. I want to remind you, this event is free, but this event center isn't. And all of the performers, all of the speakers, everybody is donating their time. And we hope that you'll find in your hearts that you can donate a little bit to help us have this same event next year. I want to thank you all for coming. Terry, thank you for doing all your work that spawns all of this. You're marvelous. Thank you. Thank you for coming, everybody.
And that's a wrap. You got something? Hold on, we got some more stuff. We got more stuff.
We have an open mic.
I'll take one.
I'll be super short. I don't have a good story. I don't get out of the house enough to do that. I often get asked, how do I get into treasure hunting? How do I find this interesting, and how did I come to be here where I am? I usually have two answers. One is, I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. They did episodes on the Lost Dutchman and Oak Island, and I kind of got hooked there. But years later,
Whoa, who's that from?
my father was in the hospital, and he would often do this thing. When he went to the hospital, he would buy his kids gifts instead of us getting him gifts. And one time when he was in the hospital, he managed to find his way to the store there in the hospital, and he found 3 treasure hunting magazines. And I read those until the cover fell off. And my father never had that interest. He never shared that interest, and I don't frankly think he understood my interest. And I don't know what it's like for a lot of you, but I don't encounter a lot of people that understand or have an interest in treasure hunting, and so it's a very hard thing to talk about. Today, earlier, somebody asked me how this event was going, and I said, I finally found my people. I got people that like talking about what I'm interested in, and that's pretty unusual. And then I proceeded to tell them treasure hunting is a very lonely hobby. This has been a fantastic event for me because I'm with my people. I'm grateful for Terry Carter for inviting me. I'm grateful to those that are going to come tomorrow and listen to all the speakers. And I want to thank everybody who has come here and shared and is still interested and will be here this weekend and will give them your time and of your stories and of your interest and of your kindness. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank Terry for putting this on, that first of all, and some of the people that put their whole life into this. I've been waiting a whole year to tell this story. I wrote it down, rehearsed it, I forgot all of it. I'm going to wing it, just like Donald Trump. So we're going to say in 1915, my grandparents moved to the basin. They got on the Strawberry River, and they homesteaded. So if they would have been there, probably, I approximately say about 8 years. And my grandmother's family was from the basin, from Duchesne. She was a Ivy. So my name is Meekum, and he married Pearl Ivy. Well, they was down there moving crops and working on the river. And so my family story tells me that they were working on the river, trying to move the river over to get a little more cropland. And my grandmother's brothers come busting down through the field with a wagon. And my dad said my grandpa was kind of a rock hound, because there was always rocks in the cabin window, little rocks. And he said the brothers, his mother's brothers, showed his father a 1 ounce full 1 ounce nugget, and they was all excited, and they did. So they loaded up and they headed out on the rock creek, just south of Treasure Hill. So we're talking down the river about 2 miles. There's a big stone, and it has some petroglyphs on it. And it's famous stone. It's been published many times. They found that nugget right there by that. And how they found that nugget was Mr. Ivy was down on the river fishing, and his boy coming up the road from the wagon seen a range bull. So he picks up some stones there,
off the shoulder, and lo and behold, one of them was real heavy. So he didn't throw that one, he chose it to Dad. That was Clarence Ivy. He's the one that come and showed my grandpa that 1 ounce full nugget. Now, they sold that nugget. That's his family story for 2 generations. And then later, I'm going to say around 1921, my dad's brother, the oldest boy, he was the government trapper in the basin. So he had a little tipping problem, so he befriended a lot of people at the bar. And he got talking to one of the youth, and they became friends, and this youth wanted to show my uncle where there was some gold. So they went up to Rock Creek, back up past this point where they picked the nugget up to Treasure Hill, what we call Treasure Hill today, and showed him a hole in the ground. There was a hole there. He said they climbed down in the hole on a chicken ladder, and they got down to the bottom, and then they started pulling bark up off the floor, and there was a false bottom. So Al, my uncle, lights a stick match and drops it down the hole, and it kept going. It was out of sight. It just went out. So with that, they get a little nervous because there were some people camped right across the river there, and it was probably some of the nation, some of the Ute tribe was camped across the river, so they didn't want to hang out there. They was on the wrong side of the river and doing the wrong side of things. So they come back out, and over the years, now I'm going to move forward to about 1940, when the Depression was coming on. I guess I don't really know. I would have to pull up my notes here, but in that time, the Depression was coming on, and they lost the farm. So when they lost that farm, then my uncle stayed on as a trapper right here in Duchesne, and watched that hole over the years, that same hole. And he showed my uncle and my father this hole. And it's right where Mr. Bullock was talking about the pine mine. This is exactly the same spot, exactly. So they watched it get filled in over the years. And my dad said there was a stone boat, a Travis, like behind a horse, that they was hauling rocks off the riverbank over to this hole right there. And he told me that it was 8 feet deep when he seen it. 10 feet deep when he seen it. It was just cave, like kind of bed. And they kept hauling rocks in there over the years. So how I seen it is my dad took me there, and I must have been I'm looking at about 1969. He makes me get down on my side and my belly, and I'm looking. He's saying, look up in that tree, and there's a big tree about this big around that had been chopped down on the stump, and it was sitting up like that. But up underneath, there was TR carved in that tree that was that tall, at least. And I'm 10 years old, 12 years old, and my dad, I'm like, yeah, Dad, let's go fishing. Enough of this, what's this, We're here to fish. So he tells me this story of this hole being filled in, and his brother going down in this hole. And so years go by, and in 1972, we get a resurgence of literature. People from Terry and different authors wrote about it. And they sparked an interest in my dad. So we went back, we loaded up, we bought a brand new white metal detector in 71. So that's a long time for metal detectors. That was in the beginning. And we went back there, and we went to get it out of the truck, and the ranger pulled up. The Ute ranger pulled up and said, hey, you can hang out here for a minute, but you ain't running that. Put it back in the truck. So we did. And we drove up the road about a block or two to where the second crossing of the Rock Creek. So when you're coming from the north down the Rock Creek. He hit the first crossing, then the second crossing, and right there, he pulled over, and I knew where I was at. I'm 14 at this time, so I go grab one of my friends. That's name is Brian Robinson. He's of the Hamilton family here in Duchesne. So me and him are good buddies. We're just teenage kids. We go running. I'm going to go show my friend where this tree's at. And I go to run off the road, and there's bulldozer tracks in the grass, headed off the road. I'm like, Dad, there's cat tracks, because he's a cat operator, and I was all excited. I'm, thinking he's cool. So I'm like, Dad, there's cat tracks. So we walked through the meadow, and about 50 yards off the road, they had taken a bulldozer and knocked the end of the hill off. And lo and behold, there was 2 mine shafts that went straight back in the hill. And a lot of it's been published. These have been published. Photos of these 2 mine shafts. And I looked up in them, and this is in 1971. I looked right up in them and seen them. But they had taken the bulldozer and took the end off the hill. The hill stuck out just right on the river. And it stuck out a little bit, and they knocked the hill off and pushed that tree that had TR in it into the river. And they had swiped that hill and opened them 2 mine shafts. But what they didn't know is 25 feet in front of them 2 mine shafts was that shaft that went straight down that my uncle had been going in. He went in, and then my family had watched that hole over the course of 50 years. And there is a lot of legends about the Pine Mine. I've seen that, and that's the one I consider to be the Pine Mine. If you was to look back over the course of history, there was the Spanish mission just up the river a little bit. That's where the mission was at, and they found quite a bit of gold. It was said that they found in them shafts when they opened them up, but it got recovered by the Utes. So I don't know the truth there, but that's my story about the Pine Mine and my family for 50 years. Oh, thank you.
Before you go, I need to get up and make an announcement. 2 seconds. Tomorrow morning, we're expecting 6 food trucks to pull in by the pavilion. We've got a lot of cars parked there tonight. We knew we wouldn't be using it, but if you come tomorrow, hopefully I get the trucks in there by 8 or 9 in the morning. But if you're parked there now, you need to leave tonight so that we get our food trucks in there and hooked up to the power. Anybody parked in that area? Anyway, it's just where the pavilion is, the covered pavilion, the picnic tables. It's just that next 2 rows of cars. Anyway, thanks.
Oh, hello, my name is Warren Young. I think I passed out the cards to most of y'all. Anyway, I do treasure recovery service, and I work with a lot of people just like you here now, and that's why I'm here to offer my services, and I get to get together with my other treasure hunters and do the same thing. And if anybody knows of any thing that they want found, I have a little bit of high-tech equipment called the Fusion Professional. I'm going to use that I can use that on old wells, anything deep or shallow, and any of those kind of services that you might need, like I like to do private property searches. Grandpa buried something in the backyard, and you guys don't know where it is. There's one in Tennessee that's a well is 35 foot deep, and it's got several $1 million worth of gold coins in it. I'm going to dig that up. Things like that. Any stories that you hear, I do explorations. I look for old mines. I found some of them in La Plata in Colorado. I'm from Cortez. And one's called the Clubfoot. You'll see it's written on here. The famous Navajo story, the 16 tons of gold. I have my buddy that's a cowboy named Mike Jenkins. He's found a lot of monuments and a lot of stuff and thinks he probably knows where that is on the Navajo property. Of course, that's another story about getting the rights and the permission on that one. My geologist buddy found the Lone Wolf mine in La Plata when he was about 30 years old, and he put himself through college. He found a little nub of quartz sticking out of the ground and put that in his backpack. The hole wasn't over a foot deep. Went home and pounded it out in the garage floor. He said it was 50% gold, just like the story, if you look it up. And put himself through college for 2 years. And then his wife and his dad said, well, now that you're a geologist, go get a job. And so he went and got a job and waited 30 years. Now me and him are looking for the same spot all over again, right? And I believe I found the Clubfoot mine. And that was an old fella that had a bum leg in the late 1800s. And he would ride his jackasses back and forth to town and turn in his gold to the blacksmith. Because the blacksmith at those times was the most trusted person in town. And there was like 15,000 people in the bottom of the canyon, and they were all doing placer. And these two guys, Lone Wolf and Clubfoot, were hard rock. Okay, so anyway, he dug a little, Clubfoot dug a little bitty hole that he could barely crawl through in the mountain going up. It's very steep, it's 11,000 feet. And I believe I discovered that spot, is he dug a little hole, and then when he got into the mountain, he dug a 10-foot room, and so nobody could see him and his mine opening. And then he would follow the vein. The vein sits next to an iron deposit, and on this side it's diorite, and in the middle is a fault. Well, that fault's where all the quartz and the gold came up through, right? So anyway, I went up there. They've been looking for it for 150 years. Well, I read the story pretty well and had it in my mind. And when you go out and look for these things, if you've got a story that goes along with it, you got to look at all the details, right? Well, in 1960, there was a treasure hunter that took a picture of the tree, because what happened is Clubfoot got eaten up by some bears, by a bear and 2 cubs actually, went across the pass, came down, and they found him right there at the pass. And the cowboys that found him went down the hill a little ways to see if they could find where his mine was. Because they found a little bit of ore in his camp. They found his camp, and they figured, well, his mine's not too far away. Well, they made a big blaze on a tree. So the first day I went up there, I didn't see the blaze, but I eventually found the blaze. And the tree, the treasure hunter in the book, the tree had fell over. Well, the bark's off it and everything, but I could see where the blaze was. It was like an arrow, like a point, because they had taken a machete and went like that. So I knew that it was mine too, that I had the right spot where the cowboys found. So some yards away was a pile of blue-black rock. Well, I believe that was kind of like the capstone that came out of there at first, but that's all there was. And no holes or anything. Well, Clubfoot would cover it up. That's why he made a hole like this. And when he went inside the mountain, he made the 10-foot room. And he chiseled his tailings, and they would all fall down into the room, which was underground. And when that got full to where his entrance was, he would take a bucket and crawl over to the streams nearby and deposit that and shake it out to where no one would know he had a mine there. And so when I went up there, I seen the little indentation, because when you look at things that were the holes, after a while they may sink in or depress, right? So that's what happened. I seen that, and I seen the square room that caved in, and there's a square. Matter of fact, I have pictures of it, and square, and then in the middle was like a little trough. Well, that was where he was digging in the vein, I believe. So since then, I've got a scanner, and so now he was known to. He didn't bring any gold back because at that time, that day, he got torn up by the bear. He left his tools and his ore in the room. So I'm hoping to pick that up and possibly the gold vein. But anyway, that's a story of the clubfoot, and I believe I've located that. And so, if any of you guys want me to do anything, basically the only thing I need is expense money to get there with my equipment. And if you don't have that and I like it, I'll do it for free. But it's still free. I'm not charging anything. You know, because if each one of you told me to come to your place and I'm living in Cortez, it takes 8 hours to get there, you know, I need a little compensation on that. That's it. And I'd be glad to look for anything anybody has. So they would need to find, or yeah, and if you want a partner in something, you've got something really good that could be even a little dangerous or very difficult. I like those. So thank you.
Huh? Dan and nice. Thanks for coming. All right, bro. See you tomorrow. Okay, hey guys, with that said, that's a wrap. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.